Okay, so what we've been looking at so far very much comes under the elections part of the spec, with perhaps a little bit of political parties in there as well, when thinking about the changes to the main parties. But what we want to do now is bring in a little bit of electoral systems, because we can compare the results of the 2019 general election with the likely results that would have happened under different voting systems. Now, we can't absolutely categorically say what those results would have been, because there are things we don't know. For example, anything where there's a preferential system, we don't know what people's lower preferences would have been. Where people cast more than one vote, for example, in a hybrid system, we don't know what their second vote would necessarily have been. So there's a degree of guesswork. But the Electoral Reform Society has modelled possible outcomes. So it'd be quite interesting to compare these. Just firstly to remind ourselves of the voting systems. There's first past the post, which we know about. That's the one we use for UK general elections. Whoever gets the most votes, whichever candidate gets the most votes in each constituency, wins that seat, becomes the MP, regardless of what proportion of the votes they've got. We've got the additional member system, which is in Wales and Scotland. It's a hybrid system, which means it combines two different systems. It has first past the post, and it also has a list PR system, which we'll mention in a bit more detail in a moment. We've got single transferable vote, which is often the most popular system among advocates of proportional representation. They tend to like single transferable vote. It's quite a complex system, but it's used in Northern Ireland and in the Republic of Ireland as well, and does produce pretty proportional results. Supplementary vote is usually used for electing an individual, like a mayor, similar to alternative vote, which we had a referendum on in 2011. That's the one where there's you rank the candidates in order, as you also do in STV. And then proportional representation, the party list system, which is actually the most widely used system in the world, is the one we've used in European elections prior to leaving the EU. There are variations on it, whether you have a closed list or an open list. Okay, but let's have a look. So what would the results have looked like with different voting systems? So if we'd used AMS, have a look there. The big winners are really the Liberal Democrats. Also the Greens doing pretty well there. And a few extra seats for Brexit, the Brexit Party. The people who are losing seats are the Conservatives, Labour and the SNP, with the Conservatives losing a significant number, although as a proportion probably the SNP losing the most. And that's because the SNP's vote is very much concentrated in Scotland, and so that kind of dominance that they have is watered down somewhat by the party list aspect of that hybrid system. If we look at STV, the most proportional, or often the most proportional system, we see again the Conservatives losing a lot of seats, again the SNP losing quite a few seats. We see gains for the Liberal Democrats and the Greens, although the Greens not as dramatically as the previous one. And we also see gains for Labour on this occasion. Okay, would the Conservatives have still got a majority, or been able to get a majority in a coalition? Potentially, if they'd been able to have a coalition with the Liberal Democrats, but not really with anybody else. Similarly, Labour, Liberal Democrats might have been able to cobble something together. It's worth bearing in mind, it does note that the data excludes the Northern Ireland, so the Conservatives aren't far off that majority there, even with STV. If list PR was used, again, number of seats down for the Conservatives. Labour gain a few, Liberal Democrats gain a lot, Green do pretty well, again the SNP losing out. This one's better for the Brexit Party than the other systems. Okay, so we've had a look at some data there. If you want to go back over that and make any notes, you can. But let's just have a look at some multiple choice quiz questions. First of all about the data, and then about the electoral systems themselves. So how many seats would the Conservative Party have won if it had been additional member system in the 2019 election rather than first past the post. Can you remember? Can you work it out? It was 284. Okay, so quite a way down on what they did get. What would the difference in seats be for the Liberal Democrats if STV was used for the 2019 general election? So we know they'd have won more seats than they did under first past the post, but how many more? 48, so a lot more with STV. Okay, how many more seats would the Labour Party have won if we'd used a list PR system rather than first past the post? What would their uplift have been? They'd have gained an extra 13 seats under list PR. How many seats would the SNP have won if AMS was used instead of first past the post? Just 26. That's quite a significant fall on their actual numbers. And what would the difference in seats for Labour if they'd used AMS instead of first past the post? So this was the only system where they'd have got fewer seats than under first past the post, based on that modelling. But how many fewer? 15 fewer. Okay, just realised that D was 15 more, so I was helping you out there a little. Okay, some different types of questions now. True or false, the Green Party would have more seats than the SNP if AMS was used in the general election? Yep, it's true. True or false, the Brexit Party would have won 11 seats if STV had been used in the general election? That one's false. I think the 11 seats was a party list. Which of these electoral systems is a hybrid? Can you remember? Well done if you said C, additional member system. Which of these electoral systems is used in all Northern Ireland elections? Can you remember? Yeah, it's STV. And finally, between which years was a closed list PR system used to elect members of the European Parliament? Okay, work it out. I suppose one part of the clue is that it ended in 2019. Now we've left the EU, but when did it start? Yeah, 1999. We've had elections to the European Parliament since the 70s, but it was under the Blair government that we moved to using a proportional system to vote for it. Okay. There's been loads of data in this session, and it can be a lot to process. So have a look through your notes, maybe note down some of the most significant pieces of data which you can bring out and illustrate your points in your essays in the exam. Okay.